this space. Has anyone been here before? What a round of applause for this space. Oh my God. Literally. This has been desanctified, right? Can I curse in here? Is that okay? All right, just making sure. A couple of fine points in terms of details. If the whole place starts blowing up on fire, look for the green signs, the exit signs on either side of you, front and back. All green exit signs. Restrooms are in the front this morning, in the front foyer. If you haven't found them yet, you might need them throughout the day. Definitely avail yourself of those. Hashtags, we have the tweet wall to my left, to your right, so be sure to track that, but don't, whatever you do, don't take your eyes off the speaker. You gotta have both. You gotta get eyes here and eyes there at the same time. A couple of hashtags to use this morning. SMBS13 for Social Media Biz Summit 2013. By all means, tweet away, tweet like crazy, retweet whatever you got cooking. For those of you that are on Twitter. Also, hashtag for Canisius College. If you want to sprinkle those in throughout the day, we sure appreciate it because they're largesse and everything that's going on here is a beautiful space and a wonderful host. So we really encourage you to use both of those. Before we begin, or I guess as we begin, I'd like to introduce you to Renee Martinez. For those of you that don't know Renee, she's the one who put this thing together. So Renee is going to say a few words to get us started this morning. Renee?
Are you excited?
Yeah.
I don't need a pen. I've been mooching pens off of Bob all morning. So, thank you so much for joining us. This is just really exciting, and I'm honored that you're as supportive and excited as I am for this event. We have people who come in from California, Virginia, in Toronto, so it looks like this is a really big group. So I also want to just remind you that you're here because you're at the forefront of something exciting. And also I want to bring up my Dr. Greg Wood, and without him, he's with Canisius College, and he is my right-hand man. But, seriously, I think we all need to just take a moment and say, wow, we are on the forefront of something exciting, and, we're looking ahead, and we're just way ahead of the curve, and we are going to start something and be running into the future as leaders. So I think we should take a moment of a round of applause for ourselves that we have the foresight to do that. So I'm going to hand this over to Dr. Wood, but before I do, I need to know whose birthday is closest to today. When's your birthday? Okay. Can you hand him one of Ted's books, please? You just won a Ted Rubin book. Okay. I'm going to hand you over to Dr. Wood.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Greg Wood. I'm the Associate Dean for Business here at Canisius College. And on behalf of the college and the Whaley School of Business and all of our graduate programs, I'd like to thank you for coming out this morning. I share Renee's excitement about having the event here today. And I think you're in for really an outstanding experience. The lineup of speakers is just fantastic. I think I've had an opportunity to hear just about every one of them in one venue or another, and so I know that you're going to have a great experience today. One quick thing, if you have friends that were not able to come with you and join us here today, and you feel like letting them in on it, we are streaming the event live from the socialmediabizsummit.com website. So just go to socialmediabizsummit.com, and your friends and followers can follow along with what we're doing here today. Okay, so thank you very much, Sean.
One last thing I just want to mention, Tara is here with TBC Photo, and everybody always needs a new headshot. So if you want her to do your headshot, she has a little special going on. You can text her, and she'll coordinate with you to do a headshot somewhere in the corner. She's going to take like 10 pictures, and she's amazing. So I'll just give you her number if you want her to do it. Text her, I'm in, 716-474-9733. And she'll look you up, okay? And she has sign-up sheets in the back as well, okay?
So, ready to get things going? You didn't come here to listen to me talk or to listen to Renee talk. I know I love Renee too, but let's kick this thing off. I have the pleasure of introducing a very good friend of mine by the name of Sam Fiorella. Sam is a partner at Sensei Marketing Inc. in Toronto. He is a customer experience expert, has been doing business and consulting with large and medium corporations for decades, I would suggest. And Sam is going to be talking, he's got a new book out called Influence Marketing. If you go to influencemarketingbook.com, there's details there. We're going to have copies of his book available for purchase around the lunch hour. And Sam's here to talk about influence marketing. Without further ado, Sam Fiorella.
Good morning, everyone. Am I live? Can you hear me okay? It's hard to tell from up here. I have this desire to genuflect. it's a sort of a weird situation for me. What a fantastic venue, so thank you to the organizers, SNBS 1213.
Is that my phone? Yeah, I knew it. Don't worry.
Tara, we talked about this. Always from the right, and always let me suck my gun in. Give me that warning. So, we are here, thank you. Talk about influence marketing. Why do we have these two images? Actually, I was up pretty late last night, so I kind of forgot why I have these two images up, but there's a reason for it. The reason is we want to distinguish, because we're here talking about ROI. So we want to distinguish between amplification and transactions. And that's the reason that we have these two, just to give you sort of a sense of what's happening throughout this presentation and what I want you to walk away from. So we'll circle back to this at the end. There is going to be a little bit of a test. So if you can just keep that in mind. So as Sean said, thanks for that intro, Sean, we are talking about influence marketing, and specifically from brand amplification to customer acquisition. My name is Sam Fiorella, as he said. I'm the author of this cute little book called Influence Marketing that I co-authored with my good buddy Danny Brown. And you can see here my Twitter handle, @SamFiorella. So I want to run a little bit of an experiment here with all of you. This is an experiment on influence. We can see how influential I am throughout this presentation. Good flight or good driving? We're going to see how influential I am. So all of you, I can see your computers out there. I can see you on your smartphones. I would like everybody to tweet me. I want everybody to tweet Sam Fiorella is on stage, is incredibly brilliant, and amazingly sexy. I want you to stress the sexy part, please. And the way that we're going to judge how influential I am is I've been married for 25 years to a wonderful woman who is now second-guessing her decision to marry me 25 years ago. Apparently I've grown old and fat. So if we can sort of sway her to think twice about how sexy I am at the end of this 30 minutes, we will, I'll consider myself successful. All right, so I will be testing this. We're tracking it at the back. All right, so let's jump right into this thing. I can see you guys out there, some of you scratching your heads, and you're saying, self, what the heck is influence marketing? Well, I think we really need to define this before we talk about the ROI of social media and what you're getting back, especially when it comes to influence marketing. We really need to define that. So let's start there. Influence marketing, first and foremost, is it social broadcasting? Is it waking up your customer or waking up prospects? People that didn't know about your brand or forgot about your brand now know about your brand. Is that what influence is across the social airwaves? More commonly, it's known as social popularity, where the more followers you have on Twitter, so brands are reaching out to try and actively speak about what they're talking about. Is that influence? If you ask some of the social scoring platforms today, they'll tell you yes. Yet ask one of these so-called influencers to ask those followers to buy something, and the reaction that you get is not necessarily what you would want. It's sort of a, I don't know, can I get back to you on that? Social amplification or social popularity is fantastic if you wish to spread a message to large numbers of audience. But we're here to talk about the ROI of social media. We're here to talk about my effort. I'm putting $1 into this campaign or into this program. What dollar? I'm getting $2 back. That's what we're trying to figure out. So is it social popularity? Right? Anecdotally and, well, theoretically, you see that it's not. What Danny Brown and I are trying to do is move the conversation about social influence from broadcasting to actually generating action. And to us, this is really what influence marketing is all about, driving action. If you take a look at the definition of influence, influence is the ability for one entity to sway the behaviors or to change specifically the behaviors, thoughts, or actions of another entity or another person, right? So notice that in the definition, we're talking about changing behavior, thoughts, and action. It isn't about making other people aware of a product. So influence marketing, by extension, is a brand's ability to change the way their consumers think or behave, right? Measurably affecting the purchase decisions of their customers. So with this in mind, let's take a look at how we might exert such influence over our prospects. By the way, Ted Rubin is a fantastic speaker. He's coming up after me. I've been given 30 minutes. I'm not sure why I was given 30 minutes to present today because I did nothing in 30 minutes. So I'm taking a little bit of a break here to say, Ted, are you out there? If you are, go walk around the block, get a coffee, go get some lunch, because I'm not going to stop in 30 minutes. I'm just warning you right now. So we have word of mouth marketing, right? This is really what the genesis of social media. We're just now doing it through technology. One person tells two friends, I have a great idea, I have a fantastic experience with this product, and they tell two friends, and they tell two friends, and so on and so forth. And for the most part, marketers were successful at generating purchases, generating action from these types of activities. It's because there was very little disruptive forces in that communication path from the person who started that chain and the end consumer and the people that they influenced. Of course, then came the social media. Now what happens is when one person is talking to two people, they're not just talking to two people, they're talking to tens of thousands of people. And all of these people are at different stages of the purchase life cycle. They don't all have the same thoughts. Some people aren't even paying attention. Okay? They're fake Twitter followers, whatever the case may be. And so what are we generating? What kind of action is talking to this crowd generating? We don't know. We don't know what that is because there is a disruption that is happening inside that cloud of people. We need to figure that out. So the early adopters, the innovators within the influence marketing technology space said, how do I figure this out? How do I drive, as brands, we're saying, how do I drive revenue from this concept of influence marketing? Software vendors said, how do I capitalize on this opportunity by identifying who is influential and how do I sell this to brands? So a series of platforms, what I call the early innovators, like Craig, Club, Pure Index, they all came out and said, we're going to tell you who's influential, right? And for those of you that don't know what these social scoring platforms are, essentially they will take a look at the number of Twitter followers you have, the number of Facebook friends that you have, the volume of engagement that you have with those people, how engaged they are with their audience, and take a look at the type of social activity, social chatter that you can generate from your tweets and from your posts. And then they place a filter on specific topics. So they'll say, Sam, you are highly influential by giving me a high score or a low score, as the case may be, on a specific topic based on my social chatter. So it's a social influence score. The problem with these, of course, is that how do you know that what you're amplifying through these and the people that they've identified, the influencers that they've identified, how do you know that they're generating action? They may be tweeting about you. They might be saying, you know what, hey, I just heard Sam Fiorella say what a great experience he had at SMBS 13. But is anybody buying another ticket for next year as a result of that tweet? So to a brand, that's what they want to know. Is that influence, is that amplification of a message actually generating any type of action? Okay, so how do you identify the right influencer across social channels that generates action, not just amplifies a message or your brand and drives ROI? That's the question that we are asking ourselves today. So let's take a look at how influence paths work across the social universe. Right? So you have a brand represented by that star in the middle. You have a social graph represented by the circles. So they will amplify the message out. They will to their fans. And in this case, there's, can you tell the color up there? Gray and red. So the gray are just your average followers. The red are the ones that are determined to be influential according to these scoring platforms. That person will then take their message and they'll amplify the message out. But what does their audience, and this extended social graph, what does their audience think? What's the makeup of that audience? Well, Danny and I did some surveying and some tests, and we found that on average, 10% of that audience is a customer in the buying cycle, right? 20% are customers, are potential customers, they're prospects, but they're not currently in the buying cycle, so they're not ready to buy today, even if you do give them a message that they need to hear. 30% are already customers, and 40% are either competitors, customers will never buy that product because they don't have the need, or they're just, bots on fake followers on Twitter. And so what we discovered through this survey and this testing that we did is that you end up putting out a lot of effort for very low return, because a generic influence amplification of a brand really is only going to hit the target at best 10% of the time. So that's a lot of effort. And in some cases, a lot of money to invest in these programs through credit and plug and the rest of them for very low return. Now, we've always been fans of measurement, right? So those of you that have known me, I'm always talking about ROI. How do I eventually get my relationship building, my social chat, my social engagement? It's wonderful to build that up, and it's necessary to build that up today. But how do I eventually get it to a point of ROI? So let's break that down a little bit. Let's ask the question, where is the return on influence marketing? How do we find it? And this is what we explored. And Danny and I are fans of David Ogilvy, and this is how we started this journey. David Ogilvy said, one of the great things that he said was, the function of advertising is to sell. Okay? The function of advertising is to sell. So it's not just about marketing. That's certainly part of it. Marketer's role is to make people aware that your brand exists, that your product exists, but it has to support the sales function. It needs to drive qualified leads that are highly probable of closing. So now how does that apply to influence marketing today and social scoring? The other premise that he often talked about is that successful advertising for any product is based on information about its customers. Not information about the influencer, not information about the media outlet that is distributing that message, but information about its customers. So again, how does that apply to the model of influence marketing that we have today? What we want to do is take a look at this audience. So if you're a brand, if you've identified an influencer, and then an influencer has followers. So you want to take a look at this as influence follower or brand influencer. It's the same no matter which way you look at it. And when you take a look at all those dots, it's essentially a bunch of followers. It's one follower after another follower after another follower. Okay, so yes, maybe that's a little bit overly simplistic and obvious that these are followers. But the point I'm trying to make here is that's all you know. Most social scoring platforms will just tell you you've got X number of followers that have an X score that you're highly engaged with. And if they're all high, you must be influential. But who are you influential to or with? What are you influential about? What action are you generating? So what Danny and I decided to do is break this down. And the first thing we realized is that you have to completely flip the model on its head. Stop focusing on who the influencer is. As brands, as businesses, start focusing on your customers and how they make decisions. And when you make the customer the center of your influence marketing strategy, as opposed to the influencer, a whole new world opens up, an entirely new universe. And what you'll find is that there's an individual, a prospect, a sample customer, and what do? They're chatting to people within their social graph about products that they purchased or products that they're experiencing, things that they're learning about in the news, to specific people. They could be family, they could be co-workers, they could be parishioners. They could be members of a political party. The conversations that are happening between that decision maker at certain stages of the life cycle with certain types of people within their social graph are different. The way that I talk about my need for a cell phone with my employer is different than the way that I talk about my need for a cell phone to my wife or with my wife. Why is that important? Well, it's important because of something called dyadic relationships. Okay? Dyadic relationships, or a dyad, is basically two. And it's the power of two people and the engagement or the relationship that happens between two people. Now, this is almost contrary to conventional wisdom about social media, which is all about people, which is all about the masses, right? Wisdom of crowds. How many people are talking about this? The more people talking about it, the more popular this product might be. And that might be the case. But decisions are not made based on the masses. Purchase decisions are made based on dyadic relationships between people and with the people within your specific social graph, your close social graph. Let me give you a quick example, a very personal example. Last year at this event, I had the great pleasure of meeting Ramon Danilo. If you guys aren't following him, look up the hashtag Ramon Wow. Right, so he's been talking quite a bit about Domino's Pizza, a company that he works with. And we were here and he talked about how great Domino's was. I'm from Toronto. I don't know if any of you are from Toronto, but Domino's doesn't exactly have the best reputation. I think they do a good job, but they don't have a good reputation, and I never bought it. However, since I met Ramon, I now buy Domino's Pizza. So it's been a year that I've been purchasing Domino's Pizza at home. Now, I've seen all the ads, I've seen what everybody's talking about, I saw what they're doing about improving their brand, but I never chose to buy it. I did simply because I met Ramon face to face. We sat next to each other, we had a drink together. That influenced me because there was a personal relationship there. So let me give you an example that we highlight in our book. And it's a company called Telenor. Now, Telenor is a telecommunications provider in Northern Europe. They're essentially like an AT&T or a Sprint here. And what they wanted to do was sell more iPhones into their geography, because in Europe, iPhones at the time were not selling very well. Blackberries were still number one. Sony Ericssons were still selling really, really well. So how do we do that? They had the same advertising that we had here. They were still producing the same type of pithy, fun, hip commercials. They still had the same influencer programs going on there, but they weren't selling. Why was it? So Telenor took a look at their audience, and they did a study of everybody within their geography that they're selling to, and said, who has what phone? And what they understood from this study is that if one of your friends had an iPhone, you were 2 times more likely to also own an iPhone. If 2 of your friends had an iPhone in your close circle, you were 14 times more likely to own an iPhone. So there's the power of dyads and dyadic relationships. We need to apply this concept to influence marketing. We need to understand, how do we get this power that happens, this decision making that happens between 2 people, and then get them to influence that purchase decision. Now, how do we do that? It's not quite as easy, but you need to first understand, is your customer in the market today to buy something? Are they at the awareness stage? Or potentially they're at the consideration stage, right? There are different stages of the pre-purchase life cycle. Or maybe they're a customer, right? Or maybe they're a competitor's customer. The point I'm trying to make here is that you have to understand the life cycle of, the purchase life cycle of your business and its prospect. So you have your brand finds an amplifier pushes out a message to their prospects, right? This is the influence path. So you've got this influence path, and if it's done right, the idea is that you are pushing a message out to somebody who's ready to purchase. That's the assumption. The assumption is that I am going to say, if I get 20 people that are highly influential with a high cloud score, they're going to talk about this and people are going to buy. The assumption is that everybody's ready to buy at that moment. That's not the case. We know that. Right? There's awareness, consideration, and purchase. Understanding the life cycle is important because the message that it takes to influence somebody to go from awareness of your product to consideration of your product, and from consideration of your product to actually making a decision to buy the product, those are different messages. Those are different tactics. It's not a one-size-fits-all campaign, and that's the assumption that social scoring platforms have made, incorrectly. The reality is there are dozens of situational factors that are going on around us, be they politics, be they the economy, be they geography, socio issues, that can derail that message, that'll take the message from making a purchase to not making a purchase. Right? And that happens because of something called situational factors. You have to take these situational factors in. So, how do you do that? How do you understand it? This is what everybody says to me when I'm in my consulting practice. Well, Sam, how do I understand if a customer is at the, where they are in the life cycle? You know, first you need to identify what is your life cycle first for your customers. Every business has a different life cycle, short, long. Some have multiple stages, some have short stages. But it's through something called linguistics mapping that this can be done. And I won't get into all the details. Like I said, I've only been given 30 minutes here, and I can see Ted in the back already giving me the evil eye. So we're going to try and move this along. I'm going to keep it short. Linguistics mapping is essentially natural language processing. And natural language processing, or NLP, is the computer reading data and interpreting data the way that our brains would read it and interpret it. Right? And there's a lot of ways to do this. So there's actually an expert in the field here. That's Jimmy Ray on Twitter, Jim Reynolds. If anybody has any questions about this later, he's the guy to ask her. Dr. Natalie Cudahoff in the back, raise your hand now, with the blonde. She's actually another expert on these things, so if you can want to dive into this a little bit more, these are the two people that you're going to want to talk to. However, I'm going to give you sort of a high level of how we've done it. This is an overly simplistic model for a mobile phone company. It's an example that we give in the book. And so I'm keeping it very simple here. And it's essentially listening to the audience, understanding through some type of analytics software like a Radian6 or a Sysomos, some of the company that I personally recommend, is that you take the word mobile and listen to people that are talking about mobile, but also contract and cancellation in the top left. Same thing with AT&T and Verizon, features and price plan, all associated or used together in combination with the word mobile. Now you'll see that contract and cancellation are actually two different sizes. Different weight is placed on different words because that will indicate intent. Then you take another layer on top of that conversation cloud that you've created for positive and negative. Green represents, in this illustration, positive sentiment, talk when these words are used, and negative sentiment when these words are used. And then it takes in kind of a filter like a geography or a date range. In this case, it was 30 days in the Northwest USA. And what we did, this is actually a live example, it's an illustration of a live example, summarized. What we understood is that you had people talking about canceling their mobile contract with AT&T because they were upset. You notice that the circles in the negative touches the word features. And when we drilled down into the features, we understood through this conversation that they were upset about their email integration with their phone, iPhone's email integration with their corporate mail servers. That was the reason they were upset. On the other side, you've got features, price plan, and Verizon is being spoken about very positively. And it also touches features. But the features that they liked had nothing to do with the email. But when we looked at what they were saying about their email integration, it was quite positive. So now, if I want to exert influence, I could identify that there are people talking about cancellation and contract that are at the decision-making stage, and that they're a competitor's customer. With this information, I can now create targeted influence marketing programs, specifically to the people at the decision-making stage. Okay, but now how do I take it one step further, and how do I identify who influences them? Right, so we've identified our customer. Now these are the conversation clouds that you see in the colored circles. So again, this is just a loose illustration to make a point. So I've got my conversation clouds, and now I am mapping people across these conversations. I'm identifying the profiles of everybody that's being spoken to. So I've got sentiment positive with certain keywords, positive with certain keywords like mobile, Galaxy S rebate, and the negative. And the negative that we found was people were talking about the Galaxy S and Android, but they were talking about the Apple lawsuit against Samsung. So the words were like contract, support, will they be around, will they have more apps as a result of this lawsuit? So that was the negative sentiment that was getting them to not want to buy the product. But what we did, when you take a look at a sample customer, who represented by the star in the middle, and who are the people that they're speaking to about this product and the decision to buy or not buy, we were able to recategorize their audience. We would be able to recategorize their social graph. And by doing that, what you can see is that we had a couple of clear, distinct groups that fell into these quadrants. Well, these people, what we found, were having these conversations that were like coworkers having a very specific tone of a conversation, as opposed to family members having a very specific tone of a conversation with that decision maker. And so now we can start to get into something called micro-influencers. Micro-influencers are the people that a decision maker speaks to about a purchase decision, one way or the other. They're not macro-influencers, the people that clouts and creds of the world identify. Right? We're drilling down now into what we call micro-influencers. Doesn't mean that clout isn't important or that cred isn't important. Right? There's still a role for those types of companies. I think the whole social scoring platform is going to die outside of just for pure gamification purposes and collecting names. But in terms of influence marketing, macro-influencers are still important because what you can do now is create influence paths. We call it reverse engineering the influence path. Most companies, and especially when you talk about influence marketing programs, they start with the amplifier, the macro influencer, the person with the high clout score. And they say, let's not get that influence path and go to him to the customer. That's the wrong way to do it. You have to start with the customer, understand how they make a decision, who's their micro-influencer, and then identify the macro-influencers that can put information into that conversation. So in this case, we've got one quadrant where we know that the sentiment was positive with keywords mobile, Galaxy S, and the rebates. Now we can identify the macro-influencers to push campaigns out to this specific collection of micro-influencers, and then get that to generate the transactions that we need. But how do we do it? So I'm going to wrap this up with a really, again, very simple example of how do we actually execute this? Because that's, again, one of the questions that everybody asks. What you do is you understand, are you at the awareness of consideration or the customer prospect, right? Where are you? And then identify sample customers in each one of those. And when you've identified sample customers, you can use tools like Nimble or OneCube to collect those names into a funnel. You set up like a profile. So if I know that a sample customer has this type of a social graph, and these are the types of conversations, and these are the people that are in their micro, so they're family members that are in their micro community. What I can do is I can program a product like Nimble. It's at Nimble, so it's at Nimble. It's a great tool. If you haven't learned about it, you should find out about it. And what they can do is they'll take your contact information, your typical CRM contact information, and they will append social conversations to that generic contact information. And then every day it'll tell you, here are the top 10 people that you should speak to, because the nature of the conversations that are happening socially about the people that are in your contact base tell me as a software, natural language processing, that these guys are in the mood to buy today, or that they're talking negatively about you and so you really need to get on this because it's a competitor's customer. OneCube is launching on September 29th, May 29th in New York. They're just coming out of beta. They've got something that's really clever as well. What OneCube does is when they identify somebody that comes into your sales funnel, they will look, let's say it's a Twitter conversation, a Twitter hashtag, they will send out a spider into the internet and find all other social profiles that match your profile. So they'll look for your Facebook account, they'll look for your blog, they'll look for comments on your blog. And what they'll do is they'll pull all of that information in and append it to your social profile within the contact base. So when you've done that, as people come in, now what you can do is you can start to segment your audience into these life cycle stages. You can segment your audience into specific prospects and micro and macro influencers within that decision-making life cycle. Right? So in a nutshell, what you've been able to do is take a specific group, execute a campaign, and then measure the results of that campaign. Okay? But my time is up, so I'm not going to tell you anymore. Sorry. You can go over to, as Sean said, thank you for that plug, by the way, influencemarketingbook.com. Danny and I have been writing a lot of blog posts about these theories, and we are posting them all there. We also, of course, the books are available on Amazon, and we will be selling. This is the first week. This book just came out last week. This is it right here. Unfortunately, I have to hop on a plane and get out to San Francisco to do another event there at noon, so I'm not going to be around for the noon hour. So a little bit of a plug. Right after Ted speaks in this next session, these will be set up at a table. They are available. I will be doing a short book signing before I leave. So if anybody's interested, either asking me any questions or picking up a book, please come and see me afterwards. But in the meantime, this is the message that I want to leave with you. High level, stop focusing on influencers, start focusing on your customers. Reverse engineer the might be influence path from influencer to customer, work it backwards. How does your customer make a decision? Who do they talk to about those decisions at various stages of the life cycle? And then identify who sways that conversation. Okay, so that's it for me today. Thank you very much for listening and paying attention. I know it's a bit of a heavy subject, especially to start your day off with. I hope that I kept it sufficiently high level enough for everybody. If you have any questions, I will be around for the next couple of hours to answer. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Sam. What do you guys think?